Now, a week that started with the FBI confirming they were investigating links between the Trump campaign and Russia ended with his plan to repeal and replace Obamacare in complete tatters, pulled before it could be put to a vote on Friday that the president would have lost. So let's assess the political fallout. Here in the studio with me is the former Republican official and Trump supporter Mica Mosbacher, and also in Washington is the contributing editor of The Atlantic, Michelle. Thanks both of you for being here on the programme with us. Michelle, to you, first of all, how humiliating was Friday for Donald Trump?
This was a big black eye for the president. It's not just that the pledge he had made on the campaign trail that he was going to repeal Obamacare early on failed. He had put a great deal of his political capital behind the pledge to twist arms and get the House Republicans behind this deal. You know, Sean Spicer had been out there telling us it's going to pass no problem, and then right up until the last moment we were assured that this was, you know, going forward smoothly.
Mica, the great deal maker, failed to close the deal.
Well, he failed temporarily to close the deal, but he said defeat is not in his vocabulary. Look at him. He came back from one of the largest bankruptcies in the history of America in the 90s. He will learn from this, and he might have lost the battle, but he hasn't lost the war. And his supporters are still standing behind him. If anything, they blame the more moderate Republicans in the House, like Mitch McConnell or Paul Ryan.
They may do, but is his credibility dented, do you think? I mean, he denied over the weekend that he had said that he could get this done and repealed quickly, and yet we've seen clip after clip of him saying exactly that repeatedly on the campaign trail. It dents his credibility, doesn't it?
Well, I don't think so. I think in the short run it is definitely a minor defeat, but it's a setback. He has 4+ years to put Obamacare through. It took President Obama over 16 months to pass the original Obamacare policy. So I think once it implodes, and people are more realistic in Congress, and we reach out more to Democrats, which he did fail to do, I certainly see something passing in the future.
Michelle, on that point that Mica just finished on, do you get any sense that Donald Trump will learn from this, will be more collaborative going forward?
Well, if he intends to get anything done, he's going to need to learn, because he doesn't know what he's doing. Politics is a very specialized, very complex sport. And right now, he's kind of barreling ahead as though he can still run it like he ran one of his companies. And there are an awful lot of lawmakers in both houses who intend to disabuse him of that notion. So if he doesn't learn, he's not getting anything done.
I predict that he will rewrite a book, The Art of the Political Deal. He certainly learned a lot. This country is not a dictatorship. We have over 435 individual personalities in the House alone. And it definitely is going to take a little more time to court those individuals. And I do fault Paul Ryan to a degree, because I think he underestimated that he had the vote before he brought it to the president.
But in terms of Donald Trump, it's naive to think that you could just blunder in, isn't it? I mean, there was a brutal piece in the New York Times by Maureen Dowd who said that he holds himself up as the next Ronald Reagan, but Ronald Reagan knew what he didn't know, and under the surface brought in a lot of experts to help him get things through. Donald Trump is simply not doing that.
Well, there was a big rush to push this through. And so I certainly concede that point. However, I think he certainly has learned from this experience. He has stumbled, and he will get up, and he's looking forward to the tax bill, which is very complicated. You know, we have one of the largest corporate tax rates in the industrialized world. And Americans very much want something more simple, such as a tax flat plan. And it's going to be very important that he go about the architecture of this bill in a more disciplined manner.
I'll come back to tax in a moment. Michelle, that point about others were responsible, I mean, you're sitting there in Washington. Are people buying that it wasn't Trump's fault, it was other people along the chain?
Well, I think part of the problem is that people have kind of gotten the sense that it's never Trump's fault. No matter what happens, there's the joke is there's always someone else to blame. But the reality of American politics is the buck stops with the president for an awful lot of voters. Yes, there will be a small percentage of Trump fans who will forgive him anything. He jokes that, you know, they'll stick by him no matter what happens. And for that small percentage, that's true. But for everyone else, it does not matter if it is Paul Ryan or Mitch McConnell or the House Freedom Caucus conservatives or the moderates on the Hill. Trump made these promises. People wanted him to come in and take charge. And if he can't figure out how to do that, he's who's going to ultimately bear the responsibility.
Mica, that's right, isn't it? Because it's not just Obamacare. We saw exactly the same with the travel ban. I mean, these are the days where the president is at his most powerful. He's come in, he's won this overwhelming success to get into the White House. He has control of both houses, and he's failed with the travel ban, failed with this. I mean, what does that mean going forward?
He failed temporarily, but I do agree that he needs to have a very strong performance going forward. It's only been 67 days. I think more importantly is that there are 10 vulnerable Democratic senators in swing states that Trump voters carried, such as Pennsylvania, Senator Nelson in Florida. I think those individuals are also somewhat being held accountable for this health care fiasco, because as we say in Texas, Obamacare is all hat, no cattle. I, for example, am part of the mature segment of the population who has a 25% increase of my premium in 2017. Now, that means that I have a one-size-fits-all health care policy. I have to pay for maternity care, which at my age is laughable. And by the way, it's just catastrophic insurance. So at the end of this year, I will have paid $27,000, and that's under Obamacare.
Michelle, I started the introduction by going through the week that Trump had last week. That issue about Russia, how much is that eroding Donald Trump's authority, do you think?
Well, it's caused, I think what it does is it just adds to the general sense of chaos. And that makes Republicans in Washington on the Hill very nervous. When things like this get mishandled, they don't kind of have a sense that the White House is kind of got their back on a lot of things. They can't rely on them to know what they're doing. So it's going to get really messy going forward, and that doesn't help the White House convey this sense of they're, you know, in charge and running things beautifully and draining the swamp. All of this ultimately kind of chips away at the idea that Trump can fix things.
Mica, I mean, so much was based around jobs for his base. Do you think that will be the key? If he can bring more jobs, then perhaps some of these things, Obamacare, travel bans, that will be less in the forefront of basically his base.
Absolutely, just like Reagan. The focus is on economic prosperity, on increasing wages, and also on rebuilding the military and national, security. And those are the issues he campaigned on in the Rust Belt states. Bear in mind, it's white, blue-collar workers that were his core supporters, and I think that they're expecting to see more companies.
But he campaigned on those other things as well and hasn't delivered. There'll be people getting nervous and thinking, my word, he was so definitive during the campaign, and it's not actually happening.
Oh, he hasn't wavered, but look, already he's signed a bill to bring back the Keystone Pipeline, for example, bringing 800,000 barrels of oil to the Gulf of Mexico, which will stimulate more jobs. He's encouraging a business climate in the country to encourage manufacturers, car manufacturers, to remain here in the U.S. to produce goods. So I think ultimately we are seeing a stimulation in the economy. Look at the stock market. It's up.
Michelle, just a quick final word, because at so many different occasions during the campaign and even once he got in, he's been written off. I mean, it is too early, isn't it, to say this presidency is unraveling, or is it?
Oh, absolutely. Anything can happen. We are just a few months in. But the question now is, what can he learn from these bumbles? You mentioned military spending, Mica. He's got $54 billion that he wants to spend, but he has no plan for how they're going to get to that in Congress. That is easy to say and almost impossible to do under the current situation.
And if he doesn't learn?
If he doesn't learn, he will go down as one of the most ineffective presidents in history. But he's got a lot of time. It's early, so nobody knows.
The opera isn't over until the fat lady sings.
Well, there we have to leave it. Mica Mosbacher and Michelle Cottle there in Washington. Thank you both for being here on today's program. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks.